All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 22nd of April, 2026, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider office hours. SIG Cloud Provider is a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which can essentially be summarized as please be excellent to each other, and if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you. So I guess we'll take a minute to see if anybody has provider updates they would like to share with the group. Um, so yeah, if you have a provider update, please raise your hand or unmute and share it with the group. And if not, we'll move on. All right, I'm not seeing any hands going up, so we will move on to the regular agenda. Um, I've been doing a lot of investigation into our tests, mainly with a colleague at Red Hat here. As we've been trying to put together a proof of concept for the kind of future style of testing we'd like to do, where we could have like a generic set of tests that work for every cloud provider. Um, and I'm beginning to have very serious concerns about how many of our tests are actually running through what we think is test grid now. Because what it looks like is over the last several years, we've been very aggressive about trying to complete the cap to migrate and extract all the cloud provider specific stuff. And the long tail of that, once we marked the cap as completed, was there were still little bits dangling in the test infrastructure. And so those have been slowly being backed out. And I think currently the way the tests stand in the test slash EDE slash cloud directory um, is that we have some GCP tests there and we have some skips that are causing the test to skip on everything that isn't AWS or GCP. But when you look into how the cloud provider framework is linked into these things, I think they're using the mock provider framework, which just dummies out all the calls, so nothing actually happens. Um, so like that in combination with like looking through the tests and starting to like look at concrete versions for each of the different cloud provider really brought me back to the like kind of a more existential question of like how much testing are we doing on KK and how much testing should we be doing from KK? Yeah, Bridget, you got your hand up.
Um, Clarifying question. If test grid is a placebo, why does it occasionally go red? I mean,
Well,
if it's returning 200, okay, shouldn't it just stay green all the time?
right, because of the nature of the testing, like what a lot of the reds that we see are like flakes coming through. Like for a while we were seeing red come through because there was like an AWS image that was missing like an SSH command inside of it, right? So the test was failing because of some other thing that was running there, but it wasn't actually failing based on the test that we have. So for example, I'm gonna I'll go to I'll try to dive into this a little bit. Um, So, for example,
And
hopefully,
before Elmika goes too far, I think Walter had something to add.
oh yeah, go ahead, Walter.
Uh, Either way, but if we say that the cloud provider is being mocked, in both senses of the word, um, does that then mean that the CCM isn't actually reaching out and doing various things? Like, is this not an actual, take AWS as an example? Is this not a real AWS cluster in that we're not actually configuring IP addresses and all the other things that the CCM is usually doing through the cloud provider?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, right? Because, like for example, this is the nodes test, the node lifecycle test, right? And the real you can tell like we're skipping this on everything that isn't AWS and GCE. Also, at the main work that gets done here is this delete node on cloud provider that's supposed to happen, right? And that gets plumbed through from this, test context, cloud config provider, and then it has this delete node thing here. But as far as I've been like tracing back, I keep running into the mock provider that seems to be handing these things out. Um, and so I'm wondering, yeah, like what are we actually running? And I'm trying to get to the point to figure out, like, is this test actually running somewhere, and are the values that are coming back from it meaningful? Um, and so that's why I'm kind of bringing it up here, because the deeper I get into kind of like pulling these things apart and looking at how to re-implement them, the more I have questions about like what we're actually running and everything. And for example, or for another example, the same thing, coming out of this like GCP directory, there's theoretically a whole bunch of stuff that's happening in here. And I keep coming back to like finding the mock provider, like kind of substituted into these places. So I'm really questioning like, what is it we're running, and what are we doing here? Well,
So
did you still have your hand up? Sorry.
I not still. I once again have my hand up. You're looking in KK, and so I'm wondering. Not that I don't. Let me be careful how I say this because I'm not trying to insult you. I'm wondering if that is the wrong place to be doing this in a new cloud provider extracted world.
Right.
And so I'm not saying that that's not where the tests are trying to run. I'm suggesting maybe that's the wrong place for the tests to try and run,
Yeah,
right?
totally. I think you're exactly right. Like the real place the test should run is like here, right? In cloud provider GCP. And
Well,
I think we're just not looking at the test grid coming back from these things, though.
but I think that's possibly true. The other thing I will say is, if you go to cloud provider GCP, because I was just looking at this yesterday, um, and we go to make file, and I don't remember the exact line, but if you look for, I think it's like if you look for up, just those two letters. Yeah, there's cleanup. There should be some sort of cluster. I think it's like cluster up. And so
This chaos.
cops up.
Yeah.
So cops up. I knew it was something like that. So I'm not suggesting that the correct tag is cops up. That just happens to be what it is here. I'm wondering if we've discussed this before, but I'm wondering if we should start mandating, like, I actually think make tags is not a bad idea, but maybe we should have something like test cluster up, test cluster down, and then do something where so that we can just say, look, the test, your test harness has some, you know, it makes signatures that it knows it can call to do certain common operations, like bring the cluster up, bring the cluster down, maybe even run tests. And
Yeah,
then,
I think that makes
oh,
sense.
yeah. What I think it should actually be, I'm going to be a little pedantic. I think it needs to be test cluster up, because I think if we think these are distros, and I think they're going to be distros, the generic cluster up may be different than the test cluster up, right? The tests tend to be single control plane node, whereas I don't think that's what we actually want to suggest real users do.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And like the way that I don't know if I've pushed this to upstream yet, but like, that I think will comport well with the way that I've been looking at um some of the tests here. So I've been this is the core cloud provider, the one in staging. And so I've been starting to build like a test suite that could run from here. And then the idea would be that these cloud providers could include those tests in their test like E to E directory. And then they could run them, kind of following in whatever their patterns are, right? So I think like what you're talking about makes a lot of sense to me in terms of, eventually we want to be focusing on these. And I think right now, part of what I'd like to do, or what I'm trying to do, is untangle the knots around this test framework so that we can actually, I think we could actually remove all this essentially from the end in KK, because I think it doesn't make sense to have this in the KK test repo, because we want to pull all the cloud provider stuff out. And then ultimately where I have a feeling it will land is in the staging directory. We can, in our cloud provider here, we could have kind of the entry into the tests, and then anyone who's like vendoring this could use that to build, if they wanted to use the common test, they could build common tests from there. All of that builds on top of what you're saying in terms of in the specific repos. Then if we had standard makefile targets, like the way this cops up is happening, then we could start to look at them and say, okay, could we manipulate each one of these from an external harness that like runs them, does the cluster up, or does the test cluster up, and then runs the E to E on them or something like that. Anyways, I'm not sure there's like an action item for what I'm talking about here, but I just wanted to bring it up as a discussion point. Um, you know, because it's kind of concerning me. The deeper I get, I'm like, are we actually running anything?
It almost sounds like we have a philosophical question. Like if a fails in the forest and no one is listening or looking,
Well,
who's
right,
testing the
totally.
testers?
Yeah, I mean, right. And then like, it brings up further questions to me, which is like, and this is going to get into like kind of a different area, but like, I'm wondering, as I start to build like these common tests, there's a lot of implementation work that's going to have to be done by each of the specific cloud providers, to figure out how to do these things. Like, for example, the test that I love using as my main example is the node lifecycle test, because like it seems so simple, but it brings in a lot of assumptions about, you know, like this test expects to be run in a way where, to begin with, it assumes that it can get a random node from the cluster to delete. So it's already assuming that you've got a cluster that has at least one control plane node and one compute plane node. And then it wants to delete that node, and make sure that everything works the way it expects, make sure the node object gets deleted and everything. Um, and as I started to think about it, I'm like, well, this requires a lot of like just harness on the outside. But then for each cloud provider to implement this delete node, you know, you're going to have to instantiate some sort of, either you're going to have to figure out how to do it in your own repo to like call out to you know like a command line, like a G Cloud destroy this instance, or you're going to have to use like an SDK or something to say, okay, I'm going to call to Google Cloud and delete this instance, or I'm going to use AWS SDK to delete this instance. So I don't know, like it's probably just I'm probably just having second thoughts about things like as is normal. But I don't know. This was kind of occurring to me as I was going through and trying to write some of this code and kind of figure out like how to untangle some of these knots. Anyways, I guess that's also kind of like an update on where I'm at. I'm hoping to bring a demo in the next like month or two and show like people like kind of where we're at and see if it makes sense and everything. So that's my hope out of all this. All right, I guess, does anybody else have questions or comments about this topic? Okay, not seeing any hands going up. Does anybody else have agenda topics they would like to bring? Or should we move along to looking at our open issues?
I would really like to wish I had the link on me. Maybe Bridget has it. One thing I would mention is CNCF, who controls many of our destinies, so to speak, did a tech radar for 2020, the first half of 2026. And Crow, which is one of our sub projects, actually showed up very well in the tech radar document. if you were speaking.
Yes, I did see that, but I have to go pull it up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I was. I'm like, where did I leave that? Give me a sec. Let me see if I can find it.
Oh, here
I
we
mean,
go.
that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Like, yay for
Dropping the link in the chat. I think it's this one. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you go to page 17, weirdly, I remember the page, not the link, but
I mean, the
Well,
link
the
is a
link
little bit
is, yeah, nobody's going to remember that link.
that's fair. Oh, could have sworn when I did it, it was on page 17.
They republish pretty frequently.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, this seems much more ML focused than I remember.
Oh, maybe this isn't the right one. I just pulled up what I thought was the current tech radar, but I know what you're talking about though. This is, was it more recent? This is the one from November.
Oh, I thought it was this one. The one was from 2026.
Okay. So this might be the old version. All right. Link still TBD then.
Give me copy link.
Anyway, do you want to just tell us what you saw in it? I think this sounds familiar. I feel like I saw it too, but yeah.
Hang on a sec. I actually have the link. So
Oh, okay.
that I think is the
The Q1 2026. Gotcha.
yeah. So sorry. If you go to page 17, there's the application delivery section, and despite being a relative newcomer on the field, Crow is already in the adopt status. So
Ooh.
it is. we we have done much better than many of the other things in this space in a fairly short period of time. So I thought that was a pretty neat thing to mention for our SIG.
That is pretty neat. That also tells me we need to get this 1.0 rolling.
Yeah, I think that is.
Yeah.
Thanks
If
for bringing
CNCF
it
is
up.
telling people adopt, it's like, oh boy, okay, let's make sure this is all copacetic.
Yeah, I mean, it's up there with Helm and Backstage, and like Backstage has been getting a lot of attention over the last year as well. So that's pretty cool to see. And of course, we know Helm is like, kind of an old standard at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, great to see, but we had to live up to it. Can't rest on our laurels.
Yeah, very
Yep.
cool.
Thank you for pointing that out, Walter.
Yeah, thanks for putting the link in there too. Yeah, very cool. So like kudos to everybody working on Crow and kind of driving that forward. I think that's pretty exciting. Okay. Anything else on that topic, or anybody have questions or comments about that? Okay.
Not a question, but I think we should take an action item. I'll take a note just saying like we should get the Crow team thinking about the release and probably blog posts. All right, you can go ahead and move ahead. Oh, yes, Adonis.
Yeah, hello. So I just wanted to briefly ask about the state of API server network proxy. Is it maintained by this SIG? Because I'm seeing some well, we are basically maintaining a system where we need to change some things, and I don't know how active the SIG is, and where would I be headed, if possible, to for those discussions. So I just wanted to ask about that.
Okay. I will field this as the primary maintainer. Yes, yeah, it is absolutely maintained. The rate of change in there is relatively low, but I every week or two I go and review the outstanding PRs that I know of. There are 2 outstanding PRs that I was planning on getting to this week. If you my GitHub handle is Chef Taco, CHEFTAKO. If you drop me a link, I can point you, but there is I think it's a weekly meeting for API Server Network Proxy run by the SIG every Friday, 10:30 Pacific. So if you're a member of the Kubernetes SIG Cloud Provider, you should automatically have an invite to that. Usually when I show up, the only people who are there are myself and Imran, who is the other person who tends to be maintaining that particular repo. But yeah, show up, chat with us, send a PR. I do at least every week. I go and take a look at what are the outstanding PRs. That help?
Yeah, that would be very helpful. So yeah, basically, then I will show up on Friday, and then we can discuss maybe what I have to talk about. Yeah, thank you.
Looking
and
forward to it.
just for the meeting link for that, I know that maybe I'm wasting time here, but
Wasting time at all.
Nope.
I'm trying to find the meeting link because I know we've had it in here before. I'm just not finding it at the moment.
I mean, I know if you, we need to fix that. All right. There's an invite. It got moved at some point to make it easier for some of our other non-US folks to have an easier time getting to it. And Friday was where we ended up. So I can tell you right now, it's on Fridays. But thanks, wherever you were, I should fix the time that it was just demoing. But it's an automatic. If you join the SIG Cloud Provider group, it will automatically send you a calendar invite for the correct time.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I thought we had it listed on here somewhere, but now I'm not seeing it.
I thought we did too. I thought it was on my
Sorry.
calendar and I don't see it now, which is like, And
All
I
right.
thought I was subscribed correctly. So action item for us. Thank you for pointing that out. We will fix this.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Adonis. And yeah, like there are regular meetings, so and it is an active community, so awesome to see new folks bringing issues and everything. Thank you. And we'll add an action item for Walter to update the. All right. Does anyone else have questions or comments or other topics they'd like to bring up on our regular agenda? All right. If there is nothing else, then I think we will go to look at our issues that need triage currently. All right. So we have a couple here. Our perennial favorite, the hybrid cloud native support. Okay. All right. So let's look at the failing tests here first. I think we were still waiting for, we're still waiting for triage on this from someone, from Kirthan or someone else on the AWS side. See, this is Bridget. This is exactly one of the things that I was talking about before, where this is a SIG Cloud Provider owned test that's failing, but it's not failing because it's broken or something. It's failing because part of the CI is broken.
Right. Gotcha.
I don't even know. Yeah, like when we look at it's like it's all these like failed to run SSH command timeout. So like that, it really doesn't have much to do with us, but like, yeah, no worries. Thanks, Walter. It doesn't have a lot to do with us, but we need someone with AWS experience to kind of look at it. So anyways, yeah. So,
I guess we can't effectively assert that it works either because it can't be tested like currently.
right, exactly.
So.
And this is where my concern is that even with these things out of the way, that like we're not running the test effectively, right? So like we're not actually exercising the test and testing anything. But I'm going to put together a better case to kind of prove that out with the evidence and whatnot. It's just taken me a while. Okay, so like this hybrid cloud native support, I think we're still waiting for some reviews on the CAP. Yeah, Walter was going to take another look at this cap, but this is a very long discussion about how we could support multiple cloud providers in a single cluster. And I think, this is a long discussion. It's probably something we'll need to do eventually, but we need to work out the details around it. And there is a cap that Sergey has proposed that goes into some of this, but I know we have, there are questions open on the cap that still need to be answered and everything. So there's not a lot we can do here. And I'm not even sure we want to accept the triage on this yet, because I think we haven't decided this is something that we absolutely want to take on yet. I don't know if you.
I kind of wonder, and I'm just spitballing, speaking aloud here, but I'm thinking like, if you're jumping to the far future of implementation of multiple cloud providers, I feel like SIG multi-cluster might have some bearing on that, because it just depends on exactly which bits you're gluing to what and what's in control of what. But I'm not sure that this is solvable without a broader Kubernetes effort anyway, which maybe leads to this being a working group if we're going this direction.
No, I think you're right. Like there, and this is where it gets really, I think it'll get confusing, is like, you know, SIG multi-cluster, we'd probably want to at least talk with them and figure out like kind of what they're seeing from their side, because this isn't
Yeah.
really like a multi-cluster kind of situation, but it does touch on some of the same things, right?
Right. Like it's the same, underlying desire of, oh my goodness, I want to grab all the GPUs and use them and burst to them when I can, and maybe put my workloads on CPUs when I can. I mean, there's, you know what I mean? Like in the AI space, um, you know, like, all right, 33 minutes in, somebody said the word AI, but like in the AI space, it seems like people want to grab and pull together whatever resources they can. And so this, I think, is going to continue being really relevant.
No, you're absolutely right. The real question is like, what's the right place to grab this at? And I think like for me, the multi-cluster approach, like using projects like Karmata and whatnot and OCM, like those I think are probably much easier to achieve because the clusters are still separate at that point, and you're looking at more like workloads going from one cluster to the other. What Sergey has proposed here is like, how do we do it all in one cluster? And there were a lot of complicated questions around like networking and everything that I think are we've asked on the cap, but we're still waiting. There's still a discussion happening here on the cap that I think we're not convinced that this is like something that we can even do this. So I think, you can, for anyone who's interested in this, I would absolutely advise taking a look at the cap. It's a complicated problem to solve, and you can see we've been going on, for a while now trying to figure out like what does it mean exactly? So yeah, there's kind of a little background on this one. And I don't think we're going to accept the triage yet until we have a
Yeah.
good feeling from this community that this is something we absolutely want to tackle.
See, I'm still struggling with and I would love to actually see more analysis of the desired outcomes versus like the desired approach. Because I think what we have is a bunch of solutioneering or whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah, there are many, many things we could glue together. Would they get us to the desired outcome? Well, all right, what is the desired outcome? And like, I think the desired outcome, I know I have my product manager hat on here. Like the desired outcome should be driving what we use to get there. Because otherwise, we could just go down a lot of paths that don't bring us to that desired outcome, right?
Right. And I think that's where getting into like the motivation and the goals for this, like these goals might be scoped a little too closely to like you said, the technical details. And we're
Right.
not talking enough about like, okay, what does this mean just from like a user perspective
Yeah,
on
yeah,
what the goals are? So maybe that's something
exactly.
we
Like
need to.
personas, capabilities. I feel like we need to be talking about, you know, as a foo, I would like to bar. And like, if we haven't worked out any of those stories yet, I'm not sure what use it is to be like, what can we glue together technically? Like, let's just set a presupposition. We could do anything we want, probably with enough
Right.
time and money and people. We could do anything. But what should we do to get to the desired result? And we don't know what the desired result is, I'm not sure we're going to get very far.
Right. Well, I guess that is where I would say, like, with your project manager hat on, it might be good to take a look at the cap and just, maybe raise some of those questions if these
Mhm.
user stories are too specific,
Mhm.
they're too technical. Maybe you're right. Like
Mhm.
maybe we need to kind of focus this or scope this a little bit bigger to understand like what
Mhm.
are the end objectives we're trying to achieve.
But in the case of this cap isn't under SIG Cloud Provider, is it? No, it's like node ownership stuff. So it's SIG
No, I
node.
think no, this is a SIG Cloud Provider.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it
Interesting.
has to do with how right now the CCMs are the ones who are like marking
Mm,
nodes as like where, they're kind of they're the ones tying the ownership of the node to a specific cloud instance or whatever. So there need like I think that was where Sergey was approaching this from. But I think the questions you're raising are really good as well. And like,
mm,
it's maybe a good reason for us to get other SIGs to take a look at this and just see like, yeah, maybe this is too big for us to solve on our own. Like, I'm sure there's
yeah.
questions we'll have for SIG networking as well in terms of like, how would you handle a cluster that spans multiple cloud providers and yet you still want the pod network to exist across like, is that even possible? Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think we'll leave this one where it is now, unless anyone has strong questions or objections about that. This remove the cluster directory is a very old issue that recently I kind of kicked the dust on to ask some
Mhm.
questions about it because I think in the historically the slash cluster directory, back when Tim opened this many years ago, the cluster directory was holding cloud provider specific integrations, and it has changed over time. And there's a number of dependencies there now. And I think we've removed a lot of what we did, and now we're trying to solve like what is the end of this? And I don't think cloud provider even owns that directory. So it's probably
Mhm.
not even appropriate for us to be like accepting triage on this. But this is a discussion that's continuing, to happen. So I don't think there's much
Yeah.
really for us to do there, unfortunately.
Okay. And
And
then
I don't
finally,
figure out what's the best path for delivering cloud config and nodes. I think this is probably aged out. I'm not even sure like how useful this is. Although I see that Walter accepted the triage on it like 5 years ago.
maybe we should double check with Walter. And it looks like we did ask Cluster Lifecycle to look at it, so maybe we should give them a little more time.
Yeah. All right. So should I even bother mentioning that we're looking at it again? We're just going to give Cluster Lifecycle some more time to look at this.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't rush them. If they never look at it, then and we think it's not an us thing, then we could just close it and say this is not being prioritized or something. But I don't think we're there yet.
So we're gonna have some stuff to look at next time, but I think we're kind of in a good place on these things. And so I guess this is where we have some fun looking at the periodics, right? So like given what I was saying earlier about the testing, um, and let's see what the failure here is. See, like these tests that are failing, like aren't even like this test here doesn't really have anything to do with us. Yeah, I mean, this is like some API machinery thing, but let's see if
Should it be should it show up in a different part of test grid if it's a legit test, but it's not one that is in scope for what we're going to focus on?
yeah, I mean, this is showing us all the kube test stuff it ran, but this is my concern. See, I'm looking for like SIG Cloud Provider, which all of our tests should have SIG Cloud Provider in front of them, but like there's nothing here that's running from the SIG Cloud Provider. Like this goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning, um, when we were looking at the cloud provider tests here. like theoretically, is it? Yeah. So theoretically, all of our tests should be marked with SIG Cloud Provider. But I feel like they might have been, there's no like, I think our tests aren't like running in these suites anymore. So this is something to follow up on, I guess, for next time. And I'll try to hunt that down. Let me just make a note here. Oh, thanks for adding that in there.
Sure, no worries. And as we come to the close of our testing stuff, I know folks are hanging out, checking out things. You know, we had one question, but we would love to hear more. If you have specific things you'd love to hear about or talk about or bring to us, the meeting is for you too.
Absolutely, 100%. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our meeting. Thanks everybody for coming out. And I guess if anybody has last minute ad hoc stuff they want to bring up, now's the time to do it, or you'll have to wait 2 weeks until the next meeting. Going once? Going twice? Okay, we'll take back about 15 minutes of our day here. Thanks everyone for coming out,
Awesome.
and see you next
Thank
time.
y'all.
Yeah.